Any questions or concerns or wonderings before we get started today?
Who called them parables? Why are they parables? Did Jesus say these are parables?
Yes, somewhere he calls them parables, or the disciples call them parables. Our parable is similar to the word like proverb from the book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. I think the word itself means to put something alongside of something else, in a sense. So you're trying to explain one thing by using another thing, so you're kind of putting them side by side. So that's, in a sense, where it...
So why not keep the parable with the Proverbs?
What was that?
Why not keep the parable with the Proverbs?
Why not keep... Well, because the Proverbs are from the Old Testament.
Oh.
Yeah, there's a book of Proverbs in the Old Testament. Right? So
And
these
the
are...
parables considered the New Testament?
Well, Jesus spoke these ones here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was the New Testament written in Greek?
New Testament written...
Yeah, Greek.
Yeah. New Testament written in Greek, Old Testament in Hebrew. Yeah. We clear as mud there? Morning, Pastor.
Yes.
Yes, good. We are talking about everyone's favorite topic today, money. Yes, yeah, you came for the right one, Pastor Richard. You can help me out. Parables on...
The root of all evil.
The love, well, yeah, the love of money is the root of all evil.
I knew there was a catch.
You can't fool this group.
Does anybody have an extra pair of cheaters by any chance?
An extra pair of cheaters? Uh-oh.
Just saying.
I even started printing these in larger font too.
You'll just have to listen.
That's true. Again, so I guess I finally brought the book that I used for this study. It has 3 parables that fit the category of money. Perhaps there might be others, but these will be the ones that we look at for today. If you notice under study topics here for parables 1, 2, and 3, all of them show up in Luke's gospel, which if you've read through Luke's gospel, if you spend a lot of time comparing and contrasting the gospels, which I know you all do every day, Luke is really concerned about money and wealth and possessions. This first parable comes from chapter 12 in Luke, and it finishes at verse 21. But Jesus does not stop talking about possessions or selling your stuff. Like, he keeps talking about it for the rest of the chapter. So Luke really highlights when Jesus talks about money or wealth or selling your possessions, Luke says, I got to include that in my gospel. Right? Just how Matthew likes the weeping and the gnashing of teeth. Luke really kind of gloms onto anytime Jesus spoke about money or wealth and how to use it and how not to use it. So that's why, in a sense, these parables really show up in Luke's gospel. So our first one we're going to take a look at in chapter 12. If you'd like to open up your Bible to Luke chapter 12, if anything for good practice. Luke chapter 12. There are a couple extra Bibles over there
Well, I'm
if you
trying to get
need
Sandy
one.
to open hers, but she's reading.
That's okay. You don't have to open it up. I have it printed right on the page otherwise. But if you have it open and you're looking at chapter 12, if you go to verse 22 and onward, again, you can just see how Jesus continues to talk about possessions and wealth and treasure and money. So for the parable of the rich fool, verses 16 through 21 is printed on the page. Who wants to read that for us this morning?
She doesn't have her glasses.
Then Jesus told them a parable. The land of a rich man produced abundantly. And he thought to himself, what should I do? For I have no place to store my crops. Then he said, I will do this. I will pull down my barns and build larger ones. And there I will store all my grain and my goods. And I will say to my soul, soul, you have ample goods laid up for many years. Relax, eat, drink, and be merry. God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you, and the things you have prepared, whose will they be? So it is with those who store up treasures for themselves, but are not rich toward God.
Thank you. Good old barn guy here. Any initial thoughts on this particular parable? What strikes you?
Well, you need to save some money. You gotta, pay your bills, you gotta have food.
Save for retirement, 401k.
Well, sure, but then you're trusting in yourself and not trusting in God.
God expects us to take care of this, and this. That's what I believe. I mean, I hear your words, but you can't just sit on your hands.
Well,
I'm ready, God,
I
give it to
didn't-
me.
No, I didn't say that either, but I'm just, I mean, when you look at that last line in the parable, for those who store up treasures for themselves but are not rich toward God, I mean, I think there's a balance there. Like,
So what does rich really mean? It might not really mean.
well, I mean, if we say, if I say, not we, if I say, well, I need to beef up my savings account because I don't know what's gonna happen instead of giving to the church, that's, to me, that's not, I mean, then I'm looking at me to take care of myself and not God taking care of me.
Well, in that circumstance, it wouldn't be, well, this is a new subject. That wouldn't be tithing, that would be a love offering.
Well, whatever.
Because,
Yeah, I'm not saying.
but I mean, you don't have to give everything. You gotta take care of the whole house. God. Lord.
Yeah.
There was an article in the Star Trib this winter that caught my attention. It was about how the disproportionate wealth in our society, that the 60, 65 and above have about 70% of the wealth, and the 40 and below have about 5%. And it makes it very hard. I mean, it used to be the average first home buyer was like 26. Now he's in his 40s or so. And it sort of encouraged those of us who are grandparents and to be more generous in diverting some of those funds to our children when they are in need, and I think fits in with this.
Any other initial thoughts, Tammy?
So I was gonna quote this famous person. He said, "There's not a luggage rack on a hearse." So you don't want to hoard it, you do want to share it.
What was that quote, Tammy?
There's not a luggage rack on a hearse.
It's not a luggage rack
That's very
on a
good.
hearse.
Ted.
But-
That was Ted's line.
But I guess the other thing is too, the Bible does say you have to work for yourself. You just can't depend on others. You have to also put out.
If you wanna
and have to, yeah, so there's a certain amount, but when is enough, right? I mean, there certainly gets to be a point where hoarding it all isn't good. You need to share with others, especially those that are in need.
But if you were,
Don't be the dependent one either.
Yeah.
if you were working for yourself, so you had enough money, you should be taking like 5% or 10% out of each week out of your pay. Now, you can still save it up, but you keep this certain amount that is in your tithe. That's the only way I could do it.
Yeah, that's like savings. You're not gonna miss it. If you just take it out of your paycheck
Right.
out front,
Right.
you'll survive on what's left, right?
Yeah.
So you survive for savings, survive for tithing, and then live on the rest.
Christmas, da-da-da-da-da.
It's the fun part of the parables is we can't necessarily ask this one parable to give us, like, how exactly are we supposed to handle money, right? And even as you read through the Gospels, sometimes you'll see kind of moderate calls to share your wealth, and sometimes it'll say share or give all your possessions to the poor. So sometimes you do see this oscillation between kind of a radical call to give everything, and sometimes a more moderate call.
But then you're gonna be in the boat that you're given to.
Yeah?
Sorry.
It could be just a test too.
Which you could fail at if you did it.
Well,
Again, I hesitate to lessen the radicalness sometimes of the sayings of Jesus, right? When he says, sell everything, I somewhat hesitate to say, well, he must have only meant 10%, right? That's in a sense then how we all end up.
Yeah, because you gotta survive.
You-
You don't wanna be that one,
So when you read this parable, you get the feeling like the guy is doing okay, and then he does even better, and now instead of maybe giving to family or friends, he's gonna, well, I'm just gonna keep this to myself and build bigger, so that's kind
Yeah, because their critique is not that he's got barns in the first place, right? The critique is that he's going to build even bigger barns. So he's already, well, thank you. He's already, in a sense, saving something, but the critique seems to land on when he wants to save even more. So there's your back door to get out of selling everything.
You know, another thing too is when you see these people begging on the street, but yet, you know, you see them walk away and they get into a really nice car.
You don't know the story, though.
I've never seen that.
That could be the one nice. That could be the one nice thing that they have, though.
So just give to the people on the street.
Jesus, yeah.
I have a handwritten note next to
Oh,
this.
here we go.
From a teaching I probably heard, and it says that he was obsessed with the wealth. That's the key word there. That you become obsessed with it. And at the final verse, I have the word bankrupt, that he is not rich towards God, so he is spiritually bankrupt. So putting that all into perspective is, and that's really what it is with the parables in a lot of ways. Perspective building. It's not right or wrong, but what's the perspective?
At the very bottom of page 1, we ask the question, does verse 15, which is just outside the parable at the front end, does that help us interpret this parable? And that's where Jesus says, be on your guard against all kinds of greed, for one's life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. Jane, I think that gets to kind of your point as well when we're talking about greed or if we're spiritually bankrupt.
I'm reading a book right now by John Ortberg. You've heard it, I'm sure. When the game is over, it all goes back in the box. Everything that we've collected, the game is over, it all goes back in the box.
I know
Us
when
as well.
I went back to school and I was doing nursing assisting before I went on to PA school, and I worked in a senior living facility. And it was really eye-opening because you see these elderly people and they have a room and they might be sharing that room with someone, and they have a bed and they might have a little nightstand and they might have a closet. But that's all they have left to show for their life at the end. And they have their memories, you know. They probably have family calling them once in a while, maybe visiting occasionally, but it was really sad. I think all that stuff is important.
You know, you never know when you're gonna be called home, so, I mean, so, I don't know when.
That could be a whole other take on the parable, is life can be fleeting. You're not guaranteed tomorrow, so embrace and enjoy today, right? That could be a whole other vantage point on this parable too.
Those people that have all that abundance don't get to share it, but it's still gonna be shared at the end anyway, so. You lose the power of being able to share.
Yeah.
And having all of that does not always make you happy.
Right.
That's true too.
I'd like to try it. Oh, girl.
Then you can give your opinion on whether it made you happy or not, right?
So the one sentence that said, but God said to him, you fool, this very night your life is being demanded of you. I guess when I initially heard that, I thought God was telling him or foretelling him this, you're not gonna survive the night.
Yeah.
That was what I saw, that he was giving him that sense.
Oh, is he giving him a warning?
Is it a warning or I
Well,
don't know, prediction?
I think it's a prediction, because it feels like it's too late, right? God said to him, you fool, this very night, your life is being demanded. It feels like the, barn guy is, raised his barns, built bigger ones, is just about to fall asleep, and God kind of shows up and says, well,
Too late.
sorry about it, but tonight's the night, so.
That's how you interpret it too, I mean, that's what I kind of.
Yeah, it feels less like he's
You're
giving
not
him a
gonna
second
survive the
chance. Yeah.
But he still did have a chance, so yeah, right?
God sent him, you fool, this very night. When it's a parable too, right? So we don't, is God actually, maybe God's just saying these words, like, is the rich guy actually hearing these words? right?
Right.
None of these people actually exist, first of all. It's just a parable. So,
Well, and it opens the parable with this rich man talking to himself.
yeah,
He's not talking to anybody else, he's just,
oh, it's great. I love how
Talk to
I do love
yourself
how he's
is
talking to himself.
scary
Yeah. It is kind of a comical parable, tragically comical, right?
Threatening.
Yeah. So maybe it's a warning for us, right? For rich guy, it was a prediction, and there's no chance of a second opportunity. But so then maybe Jesus tells it for us, so that we hopefully can make a change and heed the advice that the parable is giving.
Well, isn't the whole Bible for us in respect that, so we can hopefully relate to what's going on or what is being said in the Bible? I mean, even, a lot of people don't, well, I don't know. Some people don't really think too much of the New Testament, but, I mean the Old Testament, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
And I don't understand why.
Yeah, parts of it can be filled with lots of laws or violence or, yeah, a lot of people just like the New Testament and Jesus and perhaps don't see the threads that get us there,
Okay.
you know? Okay, any more thoughts on Barn Guy here? This is a pretty straightforward parable, isn't it? Barn Guy? He likes his barns, right?
Clearly.
There's a lot of rich fools in the New Testament, so it's easier to kind of start giving them different names other than rich guy number 1 and rich guy number 2 and barn guy.
Isn't the essence of the parable the last verse?
So we mentioned that, how oftentimes the emphasis, what was that, the rule of the end or something like that? So if you're demanding a parable tell you something, if you look toward the end of it, you're probably in good shape.
So it says, how do we value life? Do we value things or do we value God? That's the essence of what is being said, I think.
Yeah, I mean, elsewhere Jesus says you can't serve God and wealth, right? You
Right.
got to pick one or the other.
And I think that's a struggle we all have.
Absolutely.
No matter if we're rich or poor, if we have a little or a lot, there's always a struggle between, well, you know, I could spend more time with my kids and less time working. I could spend more time with my wife and, you know, less time on the road. I mean, there's so many trade-offs. But I think Jesus is just trying to bring us back to where emphasis about life should be. It should be on what glorifies God. That's the essence of life for all of us, I think, based on the biblical background.
And like we've said before, the parables are meant to shock us a little bit, so they should come across as very kind of sharp and pointed and almost exaggerated. Because otherwise, I don't know if we would listen to them as much, right? If it was just kind of a generic call to give, I think sometimes we kind of need that poking
Exactly.
and prodding. So the parables will always feel a little bit sharp and pointy, and I think that's okay.
And shouldn't they, I mean, if we hear any parable and it doesn't really kind of get us to think, maybe it's, you know, we're not being open to what God is trying to tell us through.
I think so. Yeah.
We feel
I
really comfortable about it with it, you know.
Okay, we're good with Barn Guy. The next one's, I think, even more strange. The unjust steward from Luke chapter 16. There's a couple parables from this chapter, if you open up to it. Let's see, it's a lengthier parable, so if someone wants to read all 13 verses, you can. Otherwise, we can do popcorn style if someone wants to take just a few of them. I don't think there are any large words or strange names in this one.
I'll read it.
Thank you, Gordon.
Then Jesus said to the disciples, "There was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was squandering his property. So he summoned him and said to him, "What is this that I hear about you? Give me an accounting of your management, because you cannot be my manager any longer." Then the manager said to himself, "What will I do now that my master is taking the position away from me? I'm not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am dismissed as manager, people may welcome me into their homes." So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he asked the first, "How much do you owe my master?" He answered, 100 jugs of olive oil. He said to him, "Take your bill, sit down quickly and make it 50. Then he asked another, "And how much do you owe?" He replied, 100 containers of wheat. He said to him, "Take your bill and make it 80. And his master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the children of this age are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes. Whoever is faithful in a very little is faithful also in much, and whoever is dishonest in a little is dishonest also in much. If then you have not been faithful with the dishonest wealth, who will entrust you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful with what belongs to another, who will give you what is your own? No slave can serve two masters, for a slave will either hate the one and love the other, or will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and wealth."
Oh, okay. I'm in need of your help on this one. I have no idea what this parable means. So, if you guys could unpack any insights that you have on this particular juggernaut, anything strike you right away on the unjust steward?
We love preaching on it.
I'm going to take that, son. It comes up again on September 24th, 2028. So would you like to cover for me?
It seems like the answer may be in, starting with verse 10.
The
if you
answer is
figure
in
it out.
verse 10.
For the rest of the parable. I mean, it just seems like he's trying to tell us something,
Whoever is faithful in very little is faithful also
but
in
it's
much.
very, I don't know what it means.
And whoever is dishonest in a very
That's
little
the answer.
is dishonest in much. I don't think it's the answer per se. I think
That's or hinting at, I mean, he's trying to explain the previous, it seems.
possibly. Anyone else have any insights on this thing?
I just don't get the part about make friends for yourself by means of dishonest wealth. It sounds like
It's the
this whole advocating for dishonesty, I don't really understand.
verses 8 and 9 to me are just. I agree. Verse 9, Gordon, I think is almost the whole parable is strange. I don't get it. We'll have to ask Jesus when we get there.
Yeah, right.
I think the whole thing from start to finish is odd, and then verse 9 is even odd in comparison, I think, to the rest of the parable. No, you're right. If you can't understand this one or get a good grasp of it, you're in good company, right? The book about parables couldn't quite come to a determination on it. Let's see, I've got a footnote or a study note in my Bible that says the parable's overall message is elusive. It's a tad.
And even how you have it labeled as the unjust steward, we hear dishonest steward, mine is the shrewd.
The shrewd.
Manager.
Yep.
I mean, so even the headings are.
They can't figure out exactly what to do with it.
Dishonest are, to me, are just two different things.
I have something from this is the message,
Yeah.
and it says, now here's a surprise, the master praised the crooked manager, and why? Because he knew how to look after himself. Streetwise people are smarter in this regard than law-abiding citizens. They are on constant alert, looking for angles, surviving by their wits. I want you to be smart in the same way, but for what is right. Using every adversity to stimulate you to creative survival, to concentrate your attention on the bare essentials, so you'll really live, and not complacently just get by on good behavior.
Ooh, see, I like the sound of that, but I don't know how to put that into practice.
Yeah.
Because I think that's what the parable is getting at in part. Jesus is criticizing, in a sense, his disciples for not utilizing everything at their disposal, while people that live in the dark are, right, able to, in a sense, live in that world and live to the full and use all their means. But what does that look like? Especially when you start to use the words unjust, shrewd, use dishonest wealth. This one is tricky.
When Jesus sent out the disciples, didn't he use similar, be as wise as something or something?
Cunning as the fox or
Yeah, as
something
wise
like
as
that.
what, serpents are not,
I mean, so.
Cunning as serpents, yeah.
yeah.
Cunning.
it's-
So I think part of it with this, and I do have a couple notes, but part of it is that there's a lot going on in this parable. And so one of the notes says this is a matter of character. So when you're talking about dishonest and shrewd and some of these other terms, it's addressing a person's character at large. And then another part of this says, are you a kingdom builder, are you a kingdom builder, or are you not depending on God? So it doesn't really answer what the parable is about. It's because it's got all these pieces that we can't really put together in a nice little package. Verse 13 is, who are you serving?
So
More
is
of
it
that
kind of like
of
Robin,
character.
steal from the rich and give to the poor? I mean,
Yeah, I'd like to
is
throw
it
out,
justified in what he's doing? He's stealing, but if they're
My
rich,
footnote-
he's giving to the poor because they need it.
My
They will take
footnote
all the
says,
help.
What is commended is the ingenuity, not the dishonesty of the steward, in using his present opportunities to prepare for the future. Likewise, a believer should use what he has in this life in the service of God in order to assure rewards in heaven.
Yeah, it's hard though, because the manager's not using what he has. He's cheating out his master, technically, right?
Yeah, right.
He's slashing the debts of his master so that he can build goodwill once he's fired. So
He was
it's
already cheating his master prior to getting caught.
true,
So,
yeah.
I mean,
So he
part
can
of
see
it-
the writing on the
Fired in
wall.
the first place, yeah.
And then his master kind of because his master almost chuckles at him at the end.
Boy, you're smart.
Yeah, and then praises him. It's a strange, Pastor Richard, you had?
well, I was just gonna say that if we think of this in terms of being shrewd, I think it takes a little bit of the edge off of being dishonest. And I'm not trying to validate dishonesty, but in life, I think we're called to be shrewd. That means to be wise, that means to be engaged and know what we're doing. So that's kind of how I look at that particular part of the parable, is even the master, like you said, he's kind of got this chuckle on his face when he's talking about, yeah, you were doing a good job of being brilliantly dishonest. No, I understand that. And sometimes when you take a look at just general populace, it's people that have wisdom, street wisdom, so to speak, that are oftentimes get by better in life than those that are not very street smart. If you're not street smart, in terms of not having good knowledge about what's really going on in the world, you can fall into so many traps, so many conspiracy theories, so to speak, and so many, I call it rabbit holes with my wife. And, you go down this rabbit hole and it doesn't really gain you anything. So you have to be shrewd or wise about those things in life that are taking you on a path that's not good, not godly, not glorifying God, so to speak.
So in other words, in this parable, the minister, or the what do you call it?
Steward?
Isn't, it's not God in this instance, it's maybe not a good person to begin with?
Well, I think that's what the parable is probably portraying.
I just looked up shrewd and it means, yes, all of what we're talking about, but at the end it says for one's personal advantage. So, and this would be more of the pure meaning of the word, not what we think, or, so, and then further back than that, it even means, possibly even in biblical times meant sharp and, let me see here, wicked. So,
Yeah, because he's gaining something at the expense of his master.
right.
That's what I meant, is who is the master in this situation?
Well, it doesn't have to be anybody, right?
It's not portraying God in any way, is it?
It doesn't have to be. You could say the manager.
Because if he was a shrewd person himself, or a dishonest person himself, that's why he would probably be like, I get it.
No?
Yeah, you could say, well, I would maybe say that the rich man was God who has, I won't necessarily press them to be,
Nobody's God in this picture.
yeah, not necessarily.
Okay, if you look up the Greek, which I just did, it talks about, this is what it says, pertaining to understanding resulting from insight and wisdom. So, I mean, that was the Greek idea behind the word. I don't know if that's helpful or not, but.
It doesn't have a bad, then in other words, it doesn't have a negative connotation in that.
Not the way the
interpretation.
Greek has it portrayed.
Huh.
But it's the opposite of generous. I mean, this is what God calls us to be, period. It's not being generous.
But I think those two things are separated. They're really not on the same level, or
Right.
one is not, you can be generous and still be shrewd. You can. I mean, that's what the Greek says.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you could maybe get away with skewing the shrewdly part to be wise or discerning or sharp.
Well, it is the Greek. I mean, there's
Yeah,
an important distinction between
Yeah.
what we look at in terms of the actual language and what we have turned it into in English. So
Yeah.
Right.
I think we have to be careful about what we put on that word if we don't go back to the Greek and understand it.
Yeah, but verse 9 is the linchpin, though, right? You can't get away from make friends for yourselves with dishonest wealth. So that, to me, helps unpack how he was acting shrewdly. He's making friends through dishonest wealth, which that, to me, means that's explaining the shrewdness,
Okay.
right?
That's a good point, yeah.
What kind of friends is he gaining?
What kind of,
What kind of friends maybe is another thing.
yeah. This is a tough one. There's,
Very tough.
the book struggled with it. It gave 16 possibilities with how to interpret it, which is the most of any parable. Normally it gives maybe half a dozen, so it just threw all the spaghetti it could at the wall. I list a few here. Theological angles, right? Yeah, I guess I would preach on we're called to be wise and just try and dance around what that looks like. How far do we push boundaries? This kind of gets back to what do we mean by shrewd, right? At what point are we kind of crossing the line into more nefarious activities? Because it seems like the shrewd manager might be really knocking on that door of not illicit behavior, but odd behavior.
Back to verse 9,
Yeah.
it's right at the end there, so that when it is gone, they may welcome you into the eternal homes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not that, you're fired and you go down the street and they're gonna welcome you into their house. What does that mean, eternal?
Yeah, I think this is a focus on the end, right?
I mean, I just kind of caught the word eternal.
Yeah. Yeah, so verse 9 almost steps out of the parable, and it's Jesus almost talking to the people listening, right? And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of dishonest wealth, so when it's gone. Like, who's the they in this portion? I think it almost refers to angels. Who is this referring to, first of all? That they may welcome you into the eternal homes. The afterlife, heaven. Oh, I don't know if I want to think about this parable much more.
Could it be that the word eternal here, again, I looked it up in the Greek, and it just means unending, so maybe it's not referring to the afterlife.
Yeah,
I
it
don't
doesn't
know.
have to be, no.
Tough.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So on the next page, there's a lot of questions we toss at it. We're not going to look at them too hard here because we get no answers by asking these questions, but we can ask them nonetheless. So question one, like, why would the master praise the dishonest manager? I think it's because the master in the parable is also not exactly the best guy that's ever lived. And so maybe he looks at his manager and thinks, well, you learn from the best, right? Maybe he was a little extra shrewd in how he dealt with things, and then it kind of rubbed off on his manager, and he says, well, you're going to be a great master one day yourself. It's a strange praising of the dishonest manager. Right, the children of this age are praised at the end of verse 8 for question 2, while the children of the light are condemned. And they kind of got back to your, was it the Message that had that footnote or that,
Do it for what is right.
yeah, kind of interpretation as how we're supposed to, as followers of Jesus, use all of the means at our disposal and perhaps then some.
Imagine the Council of Nicaea wrestling with this when they were talking about, what should we have in the Bible here? This doesn't make any sense. What was Jesus thinking? Who is he anyway?
Can we put more importance if a story or parable is found in all four Gospels? That must, in my mind, that's pretty important.
When they align, yes.
Right, when
Yep.
they align. But here it's just in Luke, who knows why Luke put this in there.
Yeah, maybe Mark and Matthew stared at it.
Just
And,
hunt it off to the side and not rack our brain too hard about it.
well, Jesus said it and it's there, so we should at least think about it for a second.
Give it the brush off.
Let's see, question 3. So verse 9 is stunning. We've said this before. What do we make of it? The book paraphrases the verse and says, put yourself in a good position through your use of money, which so easily leads you astray, so that when this age is over, God will receive you into his eternal dwelling. So that's how the book paraphrases verse 9.
I like that.
It's like what I said to Ann a second ago. Love the sound of it. How you'd go about making an actual action plan based on what that looks like is the next thing. But I do like the sound of it. What does this parable seek to teach for question 4? You could say it teaches urgency. The manager knows he's about to be fired, and so he's got to get moving to kind of make sure his future is set up and secure. So you could just preach on urgency if you wanted to. Use money wisely. We've talked about this. I honestly don't know what this parable is seeking to teach.
Because the master can make such a difference, because I started thinking about some of the series that I've seen with cartel and what's all involved with it, how much they hurt people, and like if you can take from the wicked and give to make something right, you know what I'm saying?
Tammy, like you said, is this a call to be Robin Hood, a vigilante?
Yes, like it makes sense to me, because when you watch those shows, and they can get really deep, and you realize that, like, there's people out there that are living that life, and they do need help, and there are some wicked people underneath them that.
Yeah, I mean, what's another way we could sum this parable up? Like, don't be a doormat, right? You could almost say when they go low, you go low. Fight fire with fire. I mean, it's kind of a strange.
But if you're doing it for the right reasons, I can see it that way more so than any other way, like if you're trying, right?
Right. Like you could. I honestly don't really know
Okay, just saying.
what Jesus is getting after with this particular parable.
Isn't it? It's almost like do whatever it takes to promote the kingdom of God.
Yes.
Right? Because in a sense, Jesus is looking out at the people of this world and this age and saying, well, they're doing whatever it takes to advance their wicked causes.
Yes.
So you got to learn how to do whatever it takes to advance the good causes. Now, what that phrase, whatever it takes, this is where we're really getting tripped, right? What does it mean to be shrewd? What does it mean to be wise? What does it mean to use dishonest wealth? This is where we'd have to sit down and have a nice discussion of, okay, we're going to draw a red line in the sand somewhere in dishonest land and say, once we've gone this far, we can't go any farther.
You know, a lot of people feel, the end justifies the means. And, that's a real slippery slope.
Very.
Yeah, because you could start to get into holy war, crusade. I mean, you could start to get into any number of things by saying, well, we've been called to do whatever it takes to.
And we see God do that.
That was God though.
But if we're doing it with God,
Huh?
but if we're doing it with God or for God.
Well, I can't
I
go with
know.
that.
Slippery slope.
Okay, should we set this one aside?
Yeah, I vote yes.
On a tall shelf.
Oh, it's a fascinating one, though. Okay, the rich man and Lazarus. I think this is our final. Yes, this is our final one for today. At the bottom of page 3. So we're still in Luke chapter 16. So you started the chapter with the one we just talked about, and your head was probably exploding. But Jesus doesn't stop talking. He keeps going, and we eventually get to this final parable about money here. So who wants to read from Luke chapter 16, starting at verse 19? You don't have to do the whole thing. Lazarus and Abraham are the only names in here.
I'll start it.
Thank you, Ed.
There was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen, and who feasted sumptuously every day. At his gate lay a poor man named Lazarus, covered with sores, who longed to satisfy his hunger with what fell from the rich man's table. Even the dogs would come and lick his sores. The poor man died and was carried away by the angels to be with Abraham. The rich man also died and was buried in Hades, where he was being tormented. He lifted up his eyes and saw Abraham far away with Lazarus by his side. He called out, "Father Abraham, have mercy on me, and send Lazarus to dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue, for I am in agony in these flames." But Abraham said, "Child, remember that during your lifetime you received your good things, and Lazarus in like manner in evil things. But now he is comforted here, and you are in agony. Besides all this, between you and us, a great chasm has been fixed, so that those who might want to pass from here to you cannot do so, and no one can cross from there to us." He said, "I beg you, Father, to send him to my father's house, for I have 5 brothers, that he may warn them, so that they will not also come into this place of torment." Abraham replied, "They have Moses and the prophets. They should listen to them." He said, "No, Father Abraham, but if someone from the dead goes to them, they will repent." He said to him, "If they do not listen to Moses and the prophets, neither will they be convinced that even if someone rises from the dead."
Thank you, Ann. Any initial thoughts on this parable? Well, it's surely easier than the last one, right?
Yeah.
I see Jesus in this one because he died and was risen.
Mhm.
Not everybody believes it still.
Yeah. Any other initial thoughts on?
It's so strange that we have this parable, and then it's right after the parable we could not even get grips on,
Yep.
from the same guy.
Sometimes the parables are sort of easy, and sometimes they're really hard. No? No other thoughts on this one? Okay.
It's kind of interesting because it's the rich man saying he wants his brothers to get this extra warning so that they don't end up with his fate.
Yeah.
But Abraham's like going,
Sorry
they
about
heard it, it's their choice, you know.
Yep. It's kind of like.
But then again, what about, what about, all you had to do is repent.
Yeah, but it's too late, it's already died.
He died.
It almost reminds me of Barn Guy, where God comes up to him and says, sorry, tonight's,
Yeah,
right, it's time to go, and there's no time left.
So I
Right.
look at the speculation, and you can easily speculate about all these parables, but that first verse, I mean, here was a rich guy,
Yep.
living sumptuously, and he screwed up. He
Yep.
didn't use his life.
He
in
didn't
a
share his wealth, he didn't
in a
see
certain manner,
Lazarus.
And he sealed his fate once he died.
Mhm.
What was he doing under the table?
What was Lazarus doing under the table? Well, he's looking to get the scraps that fell from the,
But it's funny.
fell from the
It's a
table.
funny story because when it happened,
Yeah, if you think about it in real time, I think it's even more damning then for the rich man, because if you take it literally, and Lazarus is like right there, and if the whole point of the parable is in a sense to use the wealth that you have and share what you have with others, well, he can't say that he didn't see Lazarus, right? He's literally right there. Because sometimes I think you could argue that inequality or food insecurity, et cetera, might be a little more hidden, but I think in the parable he's like he's right there, and he can't even see him.
Good luck, Stephanie.
I think he did see him, I think he ignored him.
He just ignored him. Yeah, that
Because
could be
when-
another
when
way
he
to take it
died
too.
and was in Hades, he saw next to Abraham, there's well, it says Lazarus.
I'll be praying for you, Stephanie.
Yeah, good luck.
Remember to keep breathing.
I hate that,
You too?
that it sounds like he's not wicked all the way through, either he cares about his brothers still.
He cares about his
He's
brother.
in hell.
It's a little it's a little conveniently after the fact, though, isn't it? Right? Kind of once he's been shown reality, and he's living it. Then I think it's right. He's no longer walking by faith. He's living by sight now, and he doesn't like what he sees.
But he
And
still wants to help them.
yeah, which I think is I think is possible. Right? He has a change of heart after he's already peeked behind the curtain, which, well, of course you have a change of heart once you kind of peek behind the curtain, because you're staring at it. The whole point was that from this side of the curtain, you were supposed to trust and have faith.
And I know through all these parables, I mean, it's easy to say, that having a lot of wealth or whatever, I mean, that's not the issue. It's what do you do with it?
Yeah, it's the love of your wealth.
Right. Not the root of all evil is not money, it's the love of money.
Yeah.
So what do you do with it? And a lot of people with a lot of wealth do a lot of wonderful things.
Absolutely.
yeah, they do.
Yeah, so I think the radical call from Jesus a lot is he knows that we're human, and he knows that a lot of us, even if we don't think about it, probably do love money to some extent. So I think that's why we get a lot of these radical parables and teachings from Jesus that oftentimes tell us to sell everything. Because I think Jesus knows, even just a morsel of wealth can tarnish a person.
What's that old, I mean, everybody living in the United States compared to the other billions of people that are living on the earth everyone's rich in the United States. Even the poorest of the poor are wealthier than the
Yeah.
folks living in Ethiopia. or
I
wherever.
read a statistic once, you're absolutely right, but it's an old statistic, but it was something like, if you took all the people in the world and measured it by what, like 8 out of 10 at least would be Americans? So, it's a huge amount.
I think that this parable and the first parable are very well connected, two wealthy people, what do they do with it? The first one built bigger barns, and the other one ignored.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, I think this parable is somewhat easy to understand. So for interpretive options, again, they're pretty straightforward. We've talked about them. We're called to share our wealth. Don't neglect the poor. Don't misuse your possessions. In a sense, this would apply for all the parables that we've talked about with money today.
You almost could tie it with the second one in the sense of being word to use anymore, but I'll say being shrewd with your, it kind of goes back to what Steph was saying. I mean, being shrewd of what your wealth, so that you're not scammed, or not, your wealth is wasted on someone that is taking advantage of you or what have you. I don't know, it's a stretch maybe.
Yeah.
I mean, what's that old, give a man a fish and he'll eat for a day, teach a man how to fish, he'll eat for the rest of his life.
Yeah, that's not what this parable says, though.
This child's parable, I think. That's not in the Bible somewhere?
Yeah. And that's, I think maybe, yeah, possible you can get there eventually, but the parable somewhat seems to say, yeah, it doesn't say that the rich man should have hired Lazarus to be an employee so that he could then provide for himself. It says, no, you were supposed to, in a sense, have looked out or looked after him.
He's laying under the table, pretty helpless.
He's right there, right? Even the dogs are there. Questions we can toss at this one? There's a couple. We can ask, is there a relation with John chapter 11, if we want to look to John's gospel? So this is the only parable that has a person named in it, and that name happens to be Lazarus. Just like Mary's and John's and James's, and there's only like 6 names in the New Testament. I wish there would have been a couple more. So the only person ever named in a parable just happens to also share the name of a person who was raised from the dead in John chapter 11. So you could ask, is there a connection between the two? I don't know. I don't think so. So I think we can say there's probably not necessarily a connection. The name Lazarus itself means God helps. So if you know that when you're hearing this for the first time, and you hear that there's a poor guy named Lazarus, and you think, his name means God helps. So you can probably already assume the end of the parable, that God is somehow going to come to his help, even if the rich man doesn't. What is the, question 3 bothers me to no end. What's the basis for judgment in this parable? And this is where I got to remind myself, too, that not every parable has to answer every theological statement that there is. I don't think this parable has any notion of describing how we're saved or what heaven and hell look like, right? It's very fanciful, and maybe it can help us dream about what heaven and hell look like or how we're saved. When we have this great chasm that is fixed, and we have just dip your hand in the water so I can cool down. I don't think this is an actual picture of what heaven and hell necessarily look like. I think it'd be strange if we were in heaven and we can just look through the window at the flames of hell. That doesn't seem like the heaven that, I don't know, does that seem like that seems like a strange picture of heaven, to be able to peer over into hell and see all the people burning. So I think it's there to get us to the point of the parable. It kind of just paints this fanciful picture with this.
Tell about the evil. They don't say that the other way around. Maybe only the people in hell can see how good it is over there.
Yeah, maybe it's a one-way mirror.
Yeah.
It's all allegorical.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually painting a picture.
You put these 3 parables together,
Yeah.
and the message that I'm getting is like my Thrivent t-shirt says, live generously.
Absolutely. Yep. That'd be a nice way to sum up the 3 of them. The how we go about living generously is the big question that we're kind of tripping over here. But I agree. So yes, I don't think it's painting an actual literal picture of what heaven and hell look like. And I also don't think it's giving us a theological doctrine about how we're saved either. Because when you go back up into the parable and see how the poor guy gets up to heaven, or at least the side of Abraham, and how the rich guy gets into Hades, the parable is pretty clear that says, well, if you received bad things in this life, that means in the next life you get good things. And if you receive good things in this life, that means you get bad things in the next life. It doesn't really seem to say anything about belief in Jesus or having faith, right? But that's, again, because the parable is not interested in giving us a statement about how we're saved. It needs that to be the mechanism for how they get into heaven and hell, because it's trying to get us to the point of, well, the rich guy should have lived generously. So we almost need it to be completely works-based in order to get to that point. So don't necessarily look at this and think, oh my goodness, it's painting us a picture of a literal heaven and a literal hell with a strange chasm, and people can talk to each other, and that seems kind of odd. And it doesn't talk about belief in Jesus, and if you got good things in this life, that automatically means it's bad. I think it's just trying to get us to that one particular point.
But don't we have to look at all of Scripture as kind of an overall, I mean, because when we pull something out and we try and make sense of it, but, you know, if we look at all of Scripture and try and tie it all together, then it kind of makes sense.
Right.
I mean, but when we pull.
Yeah, we can use Scripture to interpret Scripture. We certainly do.
Yeah, and love your neighbor as yourself. I mean, if the rich man here would have loved
His neighbor as much as he loved himself.
I mean, it seems, I mean,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, we're right at 11. Any final thoughts or questions
question
on
number 4.
question number 4? Does this parable, teach us anything relevant about the afterlife or so-called are they in like purgatory, right? Because clearly there are still people living. They're in Hades and at the side of Abraham. Again, no, I don't think you can point to this and say this is purgatory or this gives us a description of heaven and hell. It's just the parable it's just a plot device to get us to the point of the parable.
I wonder, will we know, I mean, I'm not quite like this parable, but, will we know if we're separated from God? I mean, the rich guy certainly knew he was separated because he could see.
Well, I think that's the definition of hell. It's separation from God.
Right, so it just stands to reason we will know that we're separated.
Absolutely. At least I think so.
That's part of the judgment.
Especially when we think about sin as the more relational thing and less of the breaking of the laws. But if sin is just separation from God, that means the opposite of sin is then to be with God. I don't think the translation has it. I'd be intrigued. I guarantee, doesn't it say side of Abraham? He was lifted up. Lazarus by his side in verse 23. It's not John's. So in John's gospel, it's always like the bosom, like, right? Like almost how a mother holds like their child. So we get a very relational and intimate image of Lazarus, like literally almost being held like a child at the side of Abraham. So it's a really intimate and loving picture. And so I'm sure Abraham can feel that. And then the inverse, I think, would be true too. Almost like a child just kind of out in the dark by themselves, right? Like they can feel that there is no one holding them close. Which to me, that's a more terrifying image than like flames and, right? Like to think about a child who knows that they are alone. Because oftentimes the image that gets painted of heaven is that relational, you're just right by the side, right next to the bosom of a parent, which sounds pretty good to me.
I have a question about, so I pray all the time about being generous and God to give me discernment on what I should be doing or who I should be helping and it's like, yeah, I realize I need to be generous, but it's like, the other part of it is like, so what does that look like? What should I be doing? And there are so many choices for us out there to make, and it's like, sometimes I just get kind of bogged down in making that choice. What?
Paralysis by analysis, there's too many things.
Yeah.
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 You could focus on just one particular venture. I don't think we're necessarily called to be, not to water it down, but generous in like I don't think Jesus says donate to every physical charity on planet Earth,
No,
right?
yeah.
Because I don't think that's helpful either. Like we need people who are going to devote a lot of energy to one like particular thing, right? Right, like towel ministry, like you guys are, you know, in a sense devoted to that wholeheartedly versus if you divided that energy up, well then towel ministry might not happen, right? So I think, yeah, you're right, Ruth. We can't get bogged down with. There's so many things that we could give to and be generous to. I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, this is going to be my cause, and I'm going to be incredibly generous with this one particular, right? It's like saying we all have particular gifts and skills. We're not supposed to have every gift and skill, right? Nor are we supposed to try and get every gift and skill. So all of us have a particular wheelhouse that we are good at, and I think generosity can be, you could say, this is my wheelhouse for generosity, and I'm just gonna, you know, give all I got for this corner, knowing that my brother in the chair next to me has got this over here, right? And that to me is the beauty of community, right? So when we think of our gifts as being diverse, well then our generosity can certainly be diverse, too.
Pick something that is, you know, close to you, or multiple sclerosis, you know, donating the, you know, the foundation, or, you know, the advancements, you know, you wonder how that's, has helped, but the advancements over the last 30 years may not help Lori today, but someone 10 years from now, but Joe, you get a little concerned about the larger those organizations get.
Yeah.
Are they using everything
Right.
efficiently as your goal? But
Because even in this parable here, the call isn't for the rich man to be generous with every poor person. There was one person in particular, in a sense, if you wanted to really make it say one thing. There was one person in particular that was at his doorstep. And then maybe after that, there could have been a second person, right? So just kind of one person.
Could be localized.
Oh, absolutely.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can think of it as a parent, you know, if you have more than one child. This one's always in trouble, this one never is. And what if you spent all of your time and energy on the one that,
Yeah. Or thinking about adopting, I would love to adopt every dog in the world, right? Right. But you can't. You can only really adopt one, maybe two or three, and then you just have to focus your efforts and be generous with them, right?
They were like that.
Shall we pray?
Yeah.